Hey, you can go ahead and make me a co-host. I know Gwen chaired last week in my absence, but I'm here this week.
Oh, sounds good, Brian. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you.
And Brian, once 12:15 approaches, we're all ready to go on the computer side of things. So feel free to get started.
Okay, great. And are you able to call roll, or do you want me to call it, or?
I should be able to do it if you'd like me to, whichever you prefer.
If you could do it, that would be great. And I will give you a heads up that there's several people who have some conflicts. And if it's helpful to know that in advance, I can tell you right now.
Oh, yes, actually, that would be great if you could tell me.
What I remember is Sandra emailed. She will be out. Jordan emailed, and he will be out. I believe that Heather is joining for the beginning, so I know she has a conflict later. I think Heather will be here. I'm sorry, thinking out loud. Stacy Anderson is attending another thing at my request, so she'll be gone. And if I think of so Stacy, Jordan, Sandra, and maybe Heather. Well, I think that's what I know.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. That's helpful.
You're welcome. Afternoon, Jesse. Thanks for turning your video on. I think it's maybe you and me.
Not quite a quorum. Oh, here we go.
Good to see you guys.
Hello, John.
Hey, good to see
How many does it take?
Oh, we 7 is an official quorum, but we don't have an action item, so it's we can still meet. Not an issue.
I see.
And even without a quorum, you can take action as long as we note it. If it were a different situation. All right, I see it's 12:15. I'm going to ask folks council members to turn on their video if they have their audio on, and we're going to get going. I'd like to call to order Budget Committee of the Whole for today, Wednesday, March 31st. Our first item, well, I'll start with, we're continuing to meet remotely. If you could actually put that slide back up there, my apologies. That slide provides, thank you. This is the link, the city's webpage where folks can find agendas and related documents. And if you could go to the next slide, thank you. We continue to have several opportunities for public comment from folks, both during the meeting as well as outside of the meeting time. Those are listed on the slide. If you're a participant in the meeting, you can raise and lower your hand as a participant. There's an opportunity to click more if you're on an iPhone or Android phone to raise or lower your hand. Dial-in participants can use *9 also to raise and lower their hand. And then, as always, we've got our voicemail system that goes to all council members at 406-552-6012, and the email for all council, council@ci.missoula.mt.us. Thank you, and we can take that down. First item is roll, and if you wouldn't mind calling roll, that'd be great.
I sure can. Just get to eScribe here. All right, Mirtha Becerra.
Present.
John Contos.
Here.
Heather Harp.
Not seeing her on. I think she'll be gone.
Okay, thank you. Gwen Jones.
Present.
Julie Merritt.
Not seeing Julie.
No Julie today. Jesse Ramos.
Present.
Amber Sherrill.
Present.
Brian Von Lossberg.
I'm here.
Sandra Vasika is gone, and Heidi West.
I'm here.
Excellent, thank you.
4, 5, 6, 7. So it looks like 7 folks, some absences that I had noted to staff in advance as well. We don't have an action item today, but we'll be continuing on with mid-year reviews. Before that, we do have a quorum, and I don't see any minutes attached to approve. Is that correct?
No, they should be attached there from the last meeting. Let's see. If you go to the PDF on the website, or would you like, they should be attached there.
I'm not seeing them there, so let's, which may be an issue for me or others. So let's go ahead and hold off on doing any approval of minutes. We can do any ones in the queue at the next meeting.
All right, I'll make note of that. Thank you. And I'll make sure to get you a copy. I'm not sure why they're not showing.
No problem. Thanks.
Thank you.
At this point, I'm happy to take any public comment on items not on the agenda today. We've got a pretty broad agenda around mid-year budget reviews, and I see one. Hello, Ms. Van Fossen. If you would like to make any public comment on non-agenda items, this would be the point to raise your hand. Not seeing that, we will go ahead and continue. And I appreciate my colleague, Ms. Jones, chairing last week in my absence. We'll continue with the presentation, and I'll need a little help from Dale, perhaps, on who's kicking off. I think it's either police or fire.
Good afternoon, Dale Bickle, CAO. Yes, it is either police or fire. We are well orchestrated today, but we're continuing our mid-year budget reviews. I think you're going to continue to hear, focuses on advancements in departmental work plans and overall, and how they're fitting into overall strategic plans in the same budgetary formats. But I think with that, I would invite Chief White to maybe kick us off here.
That'd be great. So Chief, we'll start with you. And before that, let the record show that Heather is present. And also wanted to say thanks and just remind my colleagues, Dale sent out a link last night to the city's strategic plan. And that's a good resource to have year round, but also as a reference as we're going through these reviews in advance of next fiscal year budget. And with that, I will turn over to you, Chief. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Mr. President. Thank you. And City Council, great to see you as well. Let me share my screen here with my presentation. Are you able to see that?
We are.
Perfect. It's a little difficult on my end to see it, but we'll make it work. So first of all, I'd like to thank Council for your support last year with our budget and allowing us the opportunity to expand some operations and move the organization forward for the betterment of the city. So I'd like to start with thanking you for that. So we'll cover some basic financial information. So you can see that we are operating currently globally with a projected savings of about $376,000 at the end of the year. So that $394,000 that you see in personnel, that is personnel cost savings due to retirements and the gap between being someone leaving and us being able to bring new officers in. That's also a gap in salary cost savings between senior personnel leaving and hiring new officers, just that difference in pay. So you can see we have a savings there. There's at this point in time, there's a projected deficit of $17,000 in overall operating. That is a projection. We're well aware of that. We'll make course adjustments throughout the remainder of this year to make sure that we don't end up in that situation. So
And
that's,
Chief,
yes.
real quick interruption, my apologies. We're seeing this fine. I'm wondering if you can flip it to where it's doing like it's full screen. It's within the reader right now, and it might make it just a little bit more legible for folks. If not, we can live. I think a little bit further down, there was full screen mode I saw in that list.
Hey, I've got Lori coming in.
File full screen display. Oh, it was down or display. It was down below where you just were.
Yeah, I think it was in view actually.
View, okay.
Is that better?
There we go.
Okay.
That's a little bit better. Thank you.
You're welcome. My apologies. So revenue. So globally, you'll see that our revenue into the police department is down by $109,000. That is a direct impact from COVID-related activities. So our alarm user permits are down just a little bit. The state police retirement, that is always a kind of a running deficit between what the state reimburses the city for. So there's always a bit of a lag there. But the major contributor that you see is the PD overtime fees. And those are the reimbursable services contracts. So think, this summer we had a lot of filming going on in town, and they hired officers to provide security and for those types of things. So that is down. Catering fees, that is when someone hosts an event and they need to transfer their alcohol license to it. So once again, without having those events, you'll see that the revenues are down. So each one of those is, other than the reimbursement from the state, is a direct impact on events in and around the city because of the COVID pandemic. So next I want to talk, spend the majority of our time together today talking about the status of what we've done with the budget since it was implemented last year. And the first thing that I want to talk about is implementation of the results of the staffing study to bolster our community-oriented policing. I did a presentation with council not too long ago on that item, and on February 1st, we implemented the new 1040 schedule. and it has had a wonderful results. I know personally, and I've had a lot of people in the community come up to me and ask, what did we do? Because they're seeing a lot more patrol cars out on the streets, and we're able to take care of a lot more things and get engaged in that proactive activity. So as a result of that staffing study, under the old 1040 schedule, we had at the most a 7-officer squad that was on patrol at a given point in time. With the new 1040 schedule and the way that we have stacked the different shift start times, we're now able to, during our peak time of calls for service, which generally starts about 9 o'clock in the morning and goes till about 3 o'clock in the following morning, we're now staffing at standard patrol, not overtime. We're putting 12 officers on the street. So we've gone from 7 to 12. So that allows us to be able to put a lot more resource to handle critical incidents and calls for service, but it also gives us an opportunity to engage in that proactive activity and community-oriented policing and get a lot more involved in the neighborhoods. A part of that also involved changing our beat assignments from 4 general beats. It used to be 2 north of the river and 2 south of the river. We've now gone to 12 zones. So 6 north of the river, 6 south of. And when we looked at those, it was based on equal sharing of calls for service. So that way officers aren't taking more calls by working in a particular part of the city than in others. So that way that workload is evenly distributed across the shift, and once again allows officers to address concerns in that particular zone, but at the same time having the latitude to be proactive in other activities. So this is, we're only 2 months in at this point in time, but it has been great. The officers are very happy about their shifts. I haven't heard a negative word come from anyone about them. They really enjoy the shifts and allows us to put appropriate resource out. The other great piece of this is it allowed us to consolidate our training into a single day for one half of the department. I think we've spoken in the past about the issue we had in order to provide training to our department. In order to get to the entire department, we would have to provide 9 different training days in order to reach everyone. So by having this new schedule with dedicated training days where we can train half the department at once, it's more economical, and it allows us to cover the entire department in 1 month with a set of training, which leads me to the next bullet point, which is we got an enhancement for our training budget. And just to give you some basic numbers about what happened with that, in 2020, the entire year, we trained a little over 1,800 hours of post-certified training. In 2021, projected through May now, we will have provided our officers with over 2,400 hours of post-certified training. So we are able to really provide quality training to our folks. And you can see that, just in 5 months, we have gone almost 50% more than what we did in all of 2020. The other piece of that is that we are allowed to do enhanced and professional training. We have done an entire training day on de-escalation and communication. We have our implicit bias training scheduled for May. We have done some officer survival training. We have the crisis intervention training coming up at the end of April. There's a 40-hour course for that we have scheduled. We have put our own people through instructor development training. So we are building an in-house subject matter expertise. So that way we are providing the ability for our people to become excellent trainers and to train the department. So we're not always having to go outside to get those types of resources, and we can focus externally on those bigger, more dynamic trainings so we can handle the other stuff in-house. So it has been a great cycle of training. We have developed a training plan that takes us all the way through 2021, and we have already started working on the 2022 training plan, so we can make this a cyclical event to make sure that we are continuing to provide that enhanced professional training to our folks. Last bullet point on this slide is one of the budget's enhancements was to be able to outfit all of patrol with body-worn cameras. We were able to make that purchase, and I can tell you that at this point in time, we are 100% deployed with body-worn cameras on patrol. We've also had the ability to change out the cameras in our interview rooms, so we are all on the same platform. We don't have two different systems now, so it makes it easier for us to transfer video evidence to the prosecuting authorities from all the way from the field through the patrol car, the body-worn camera, and the interview rooms to both the city and county attorneys. So that is increasing our efficiencies. We are able to push all of the data into one place and don't have it scattered in two different systems. So that has been great work on behalf of IT department helping us out, getting that stood up. So that's the body-worn cameras. The locker room and security upgrades for our Catlin facility will begin on Monday the 5th. So we recently went through council for approval for the mayor to sign that contract. It has been done, permits have been pulled, and we will break ground on April 5th to begin that locker room remodel and adding the security fencing to the parking lot. The department strategic plan is in the final stages of development. We want to make sure we get it right. So we developed an in-house team, and we have been working on that diligently. Hope to be able to roll that out by July 1 to coincide with the next budget cycle and making sure that that's done. The annual report is currently scattered about my desk and putting that together. And my goal is to have that out by the end of April. So we are putting that together. We have got all the numbers crunched, and we're putting some narrative to that right now and putting it together in a usable, digestible format for you and the public to view what we have done for the last year. And I think that's a big step forward for the department, since it will be the first annual report produced by the Missoula Police Department that's been made publicly available. So we're doing that. One of the things that we discussed in the past was the development of a citizens advisory committee. In our conversations globally at the city, the city is contracted with Learn to take a deep dive into that particular issue dealing with equity and systemic racism within the city government structure. So we thought it best to be fully informed before we launch into a program. So on tomorrow afternoon, I have my initial introduction with the Learn team for them to come in to evaluate the police department. And the other piece of that is one of the things that we did was we volunteered the police department to work with the university with their Quest program. And the question that we posed to the Quest group was this: how can the Missoula Police Department work with the community to address systemic racism? So those presentations and what those students are going to propose to us is next week. So once again, we will be better informed as to what the community is asking from us in order to develop that community oversight and advisory committee. So that's where we are on some of the larger global things that occurred within the department since the budget was implemented. Now I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the city and the police department's priorities moving forward. The city's overall goal is to expand the city's investment in community safety and health. So how is the police department going to support this? The first one is we're going to evaluate the implementation of the new patrol schedule on community safety and officer well-being. So we want to make sure that this patrol schedule is serving the need of the community and is allowing us to hit that goal of 50% proactive and 50% reactive time, so we can truly engage in that community outreach. So we will be evaluating that next year at the 1 year mark. And the other thing is officer well-being. So one of the initial concerns about the 1040 schedule is that officers are working 10 hours and 40 minutes, 5 days in a row. And while we're not doing the shift rotations anymore, so you're not going from working graveyards to day shift every 3 months, which can mess up your sleep cycles and that type of thing. We still want to make sure that our officers are still healthy at the end of the 5th day at that 10 hour and 40 minute mark. So we will be evaluating that as well. One of the things that has come to light as part of the new schedule is making sure that we have appropriate supervisor to line employee ratios to make sure that we have consistent oversight and accountability in the field. So what does that mean? What that means is we have globally over the years added frontline personnel to the department as officers or CSSs, but the department has not added any supervisory personnel. And in order to make sure that we have the normal working ratio is 1 officer or 10 officers to 1 supervisor, and we're a little out of whack when it comes to that. So we will be evaluating the possibility of making sure that we have enough supervisory personnel moving into the future. We are working currently, and I know that Chief Brandt's got a little, he'll give you a little bit more information on this, but in his presentation, but I just want to highlight that we're working with the Missoula Police or Fire Department to conduct a formal needs assessment and project scope on a public safety training campus building that would be jointly shared between the police department and the fire department as a place for us to be able to provide training and for both the police department and the fire department, and could potentially serve as a regional training center so we could host training and bring in other agencies from around our region. Doesn't necessarily have to be Montana, and bring other departments in to host training. So to highlight what we do here in Missoula and give our officers an opportunity to continue in their expertise in that particular field. But as far as the building and whatnot goes, I'll leave that to Chief Brandt to describe a little bit more, because I know he has that in his presentation. We want to conduct a formal needs assessment and project scope for a police facility for the department to make sure that we can maintain the scale of service that we have as Missoula continues to grow. So just basically taking a look at what it is that we need as a police facility. You know, I know that there's talk and plans in place for different moves for pieces of city government moving into the future. So we need to be appropriately informed to make those decisions about what's going to happen with the police department as a part of those global conversations. So we will be working on a needs assessment for that. This is a project that's near and dear to myself and our officers in the field in particular. So we need to evaluate the radio communication system that is shared by all first responders in the city and the county. So all of the first responder city agencies, all of the first responder county agencies, through dispatch, the sheriff's department, fire department, us, is taking a look at the radio infrastructure that we have in place. We currently have a collaborative group was formed between the city and county to find an outside vendor to do a top to bottom evaluation of our radio communication and infrastructure, everything from what's in our patrol cars to the portables that our officers carry, to the towers and repeater systems, to what's at the dispatch center, because we have an older system and we need to be able to look to the future to make sure that we maintain good radio communications. That is a serious public safety issue. If someone calls 911, dispatch needs to be able to get a hold of officers in the field to respond to that. And at the same time, our officers need to be able to communicate to dispatch in order to provide information to dispatch for additional resource or medical or whatever the case may be, or communicate amongst themselves. So we need to position ourselves for that forward look in order to address some of the older infrastructure that currently exists. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Great. Thank you, Chief. You anticipated while people queue up some of mine, and I just wanted to quickly make sure I hit some of those for review. Really appreciate you mentioning the CIT training at the end of April. I know I participated in a roundtable with other folks around the community, and you chaired or co-chaired that roundtable. I know that's totally separate from the training, but I just wanted to thank you for your involvement in that. I really appreciate it. If I wrote this correctly, hoping target for the strategic plan July 1st, I believe you said.
Yes, July 1st implementation. We'll have it out before then, but I'd kind of like it to coincide with the next budget cycle.
Right. And then you mentioned the annual report, which I'm also excited about. I think that's important with the public, and it sounded like tentatively sort of end of April for that annual report. And as you mentioned, that's not just an internal, but a public facing annual report for the folks. And then one request, if you could, since we we attached these reports to our meeting video for the public. You anticipated my question about the Public Safety Advisory Committee and the intersection of that with the Learn team and what they're contracted to do. If you wouldn't mind, if it's possible to add a bullet or two about the status of that to that early part of the presentation, I think that'd be valuable for the public. I was going back through, and I'm guessing some of my colleagues, the budget presentation and just lining up the goals for the year with this update. And you covered them, and you covered that one verbally, but I think it would be great to just get it written into that document, if that's okay.
Absolutely, no problem.
Great. I will go to my colleagues. Amber.
Thanks, and thanks, Chief White. That was an excellent report. Lots of good information. I am really happy to hear that the Learn team, that you're working with the Learn team sometime soon, as well as the public annual report. I think that's a great idea, and I'm sure that our community is really going to be looking forward to it. Yeah, there's a lot of great things to celebrate in this report. The training, the amount of training is really pretty amazing to be up 25% in the first, I think you said 5 months of the year. Well, wait, 25% so far. We're not 5 months. I'm moving us forward. But anyway, so I was excited to hear that as well. So I guess I have a couple questions. Do you expect, where do you expect the training to be by year end is my first question. And then I may have two, Brian. My second one is, I'd just like to hear an update on how you feel things are working with the mobile crisis unit, and any comments you have around that.
So regarding the training, so we are able to put 52 officers in training per session. So we're at about 104 officers going through training, and that's a 10-hour training day. So that's 100 times 10 is what, 1,000-ish. So we're providing about 1,000 hours a month in training globally to our people, right? So that's large. I mean, each officer is going to get a minimum of 10 hours of training per month. And like I said, we have rotated and built the block of training for all of 2021. We struggled with, I would have preferred to have gotten the de-escalation and verbal communication classes much earlier, but with COVID restrictions and the ability to put a certain number of people in the room, we were bringing in outside instructors to the area, and with some of the travel restrictions and things like that, we weren't able to launch that in the fall. We had to wait until the new training schedule became available through the implementation of the new schedule. So we're picking that up rapidly. So that's why we'll do the implicit bias training in May. And right now, as we look forward through 21 and 22, a lot of that is going to become annual and ongoing training. So the post requirements for some training are every other year. So for example, ethics training, we're required by post to provide an ethics training course every other year. So we're looking internally at some of those key training components that we want to provide on an ongoing basis. So we are using this year to build that foundation for ongoing training. So we will continue to put into place different pieces of implicit bias type training. Procedural justice will be something that will come on the heels of that. So it will be something that we continue to build upon in order to train our officers out there. So to answer your question about the number of hours, globally pushing about 1,000 hours a month for the rest of the year. And I forgot your other question.
Mobile crisis.
Mobile crisis. Yes. So
All right, we'll do that, but yes, go ahead.
I should have taken a note. My apology. So the mobile crisis team is implemented. It is working well with our officers. I was just listening to the radio yesterday, and there was an incident downtown where the mobile crisis team was in service and responded to help mitigate that. So it is going well, and part of that CIT training that I mentioned is providing some of the training to that new team, so to get them spun up in that as well. But globally, when they're available and 10-8 or in service, then they're responding and helping our officers.
Thanks. I'm going to move this along. We're going to get out of time here. Let the record show Julie Merritt is here. Gwen's next, and then Julie, you're after Gwen.
Great, thanks. I just want to say thanks for a great report, first of all. And I wanted to point out that just the day-to-day running of a department of this size is challenging, but then the extras, the staffing report, and then implementing the staffing report, the strategic plan, the public report you're working on, it all takes extra effort and extra pushing. And I really appreciate that, because I think you're really you're planting good seeds. And I really appreciate that. But my quick question here was just, I think communication is just always so key. This public report that you are planning on releasing, I think you said May 1st or so. Could you just speak a little bit to what will be included in that report? So
it will be trying to make it about a 360-degree snapshot of what we did in 2020. And so it will be everything that is in our administrative services division. So in administrative services division, we have all of our volunteers and all of the hours of service that they provide and the activities that they do. We have our professional standards comes out of that unit. So we will be talking to the extent that we can, global numbers about citizens' complaints and how they were resolved. The police commission generally falls, our interaction with the police Commission falls within that world. So hitting that. But we also want to talk about, and these are kind of the unsung heroes of the organization, are evidence room technicians and the volumes and all the terabytes of digital data that we have to house, and our records personnel that deal with tens of thousands of records that have to be processed out of the field, batched up, sent to the state for all of our statistical data. So all of that information will be in the administrative division. For patrol, we will talk about calls for service. We will talk about the K-9 program. We will talk about our school resource officers and what they're doing. Just highlight a couple things. In detectives, same type of information, and we'll highlight some of the successful cases that we were able to resolve last year, in addition to just the sheer volume of work that the men and women in the detective division do on a day in and day out basis.
Thank you.
Julie.
Thanks, and I apologize for my tardiness. I didn't
No
have the
worries.
right time on my calendar, obviously. And thanks, Chief White, for being here. Obviously, we've been making a major investment in training, and I think that is really commendable. And the rate at which you've rolled that out, Chief White, is impressive. Based on the fact, though, that does represent a really large investment, what kind of metrics do you have in place to measure how effective the training is for our officers moving forward? I know that's not something you have a snapshot of right to begin with, but what do we have in place to measure if this is being effective for us?
So first and foremost, we are doing extensive evaluations, having the officers provide evaluations of each course that they go through upon completion. So to make sure that we are hitting some of their needs and that we're bringing in the proper professionals. So we do that right out of the chute. The other piece that we will look at is we will start looking at citizens' complaints, right? We had a class on verbal communication and de-escalation. And so we will start looking at the patterns that our officers are involved in the field to see if that's working, if we need to bolster it, if we need to take a different approach. Some of the other things that we will evaluate, once again with de-escalation, is we will, as we do now, but ongoing, is looking at our use of force and those after action evaluations of our force options, and to making sure that they are appropriate, not only with Department of Policy, the law, and the state and federal constitution, but with globally what we're expecting of our officers as a community.
Thank you. Heather, you've got the last one.
Thanks, Brian. Chief White, thanks so much for being here today. I guess kind of following the line of thinking Julie was going down in terms of metrics. One of the things I know you are a member of is the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. There we go. And I was wondering if you could kind of just briefly share what that group is really trying to do in terms of not just create safety and amongst our community, but also try and be cognizant of the impact of those that get swept up in the system. How does that, will that at all be reported inside of that annual report in terms of how we can create better outcomes?
So it won't be part of our annual report. So that is a much more global, systematic look at the justice system, and each individual partner within that, we have our space that we're able to work in. So the global goal is to have a more coordinated effort in addressing recidivism, in addressing some of those other drivers around mental health and around substance abuse that can drive crime. So as it relates to what we're doing within the police department in those spaces, we have various programs that are not necessarily a part of the CJCC, but they're definitely stakeholders in it. So we have the substance abuse Montana that was part of our local narcotics task force, was given money to produce a new program. So to deal with substance abuse, particularly around methamphetamine. And so we are working with them to help them stand up their new programs. So those types of things will be within the reporting of the annual report. But as far as the global CJCC information, that is a much broader look at how probation, parole, all the substance abuse counselors, mental health counselors, partnership health, the sheriff's department, the county attorney, the city attorney, all the different judges and courts, how we all come together and work towards finding some reform and addressing some recidivism issues.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. We're out of time, but I want to thank you for the presentation. And just two closing points. I think to Heather's good question, I would certainly hope that the annual report would, at a minimum, highlight, though, the police department's participation in the CJCC. I think that alone is important to convey. And I really appreciate Julie's question. I was thinking and not coming up with a good way to articulate it, and I'm glad she brought it up. And I think really, I think what we're getting at is the efficacy of that training investment and how we track that. And the metrics that you described made sense to me. I'm also sure that that is a complicated and rich field of inquiry, if you will. And I feel comfortable saying council would be interested in making sure that you've got the resources at your disposal to, be looking wherever it makes sense to look and engaging whoever it makes sense to engage to really test out that value proposition about the efficacy of our training investment. So, but thanks for speaking to it. I appreciate it and appreciate the question. And with that, we are going to move to fire. Thank you.
Thank you. I may jump off because I have another meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Chief Brandt, are you out there?
Yes, we are. And with us today, as we
Actually, Chief, you are at the back of the deepest and darkest cave I can imagine.
Well, this is where the magic happens.
Okay, there you are. We just need to work on the volume. Let's see if we can get that fixed.
That's something that has to be done on your end or mine. So.
We just can't hear you very well.
Okay. You've got an all-in-one mic here. Is that better if I speak up?
That's better.
Okay. All right. We'll start with, we'll go with enunciation first and then a little vocal of that. So
it's much better now. Whatever just happened, that I think fixed it.
All right. Today I've got Chief Hughes and Chief Davis and our Fire Services Manager, Cheryl Schatz is here. And so we will attempt to run through our presentation with everyone. So.
While you're getting that set up, Chief, I will extend a thank you that I'm confident comes from everybody. Hope that there's a lot of love being felt for all of the fire department personnel putting needles in arms. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were proud for the opportunity for sure. And yeah, just pressing forward. And I think it's great work shown by our municipality and, all departments across the city and making everything happen. So. Yep. Is that up for everybody? Thumbs up. Okay. So we'll roll in. Look at my space. There we go. So we'll just run through the information that we get from finance. So the revenues in our department obviously impacted a bit through this last year. I don't know that I need to roll through all of those permits. Most of them are fairly straightforward. But with the revenues, we did come out at the end looking at 349,307 to the good. Again, the same as Chief White, the state contributions really skew that number. And so as I think he stated that pretty well as far as money's in and money's back, what we're looking to come in with. And again, that would be attributed to our vacancy savings, I believe as well. Our expenditures this year, we look at the bottom right column as most people do, looking to end the year in the hole, unfortunately, with 460,000 roughly there. Certainly all attributed to the impacts that COVID had on the department and keeping minimum staffing throughout the year. And I will just keep rolling with this and go through there.
Yeah, I think Chief on that one, we'll just put a pin on that. I think that's a large enough number that we'd be interested in following up on it. But also appreciate the intersection there with COVID and other funds, and we can bring that up with Dale.
Yes, sir. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, we'll roll into COVID and its partial, its effects overshadowing almost everything this year. Certainly some great opportunity to be in the public and helping our community. At the snapshot of this, which was about a week ago, we were 370,000 we incurred in costs. That number grows every single day as we are staffing our clinics daily. We're into with the UM Pharmacy, our Luckies, our fairgrounds, and our influence into there to try to help out. So that cost is just increasing every day, and I think it sums up at the end of this. So I'll just roll down the bullet points. We had 8,831 hours of COVID-related leave taken. Some of our folks were able to work from home to keep them safe, and most of those folks are rolled back now as we've got shot in arms and everyone here is vaccinated, and we're getting back to normal, if you can call it that. As I did mention, we're a very large player in our vaccination coordination team. That team was stood up, I believe, in January 14th, and we've been rolling pretty much 7 days a week since. We've had a great opportunity to be in almost every clinic that's going. The mass vaccinations at the university has been a true success for the community, but the manpower that it takes to coordinate, also to staff those, has been great. And I can't speak enough to the men and women of this fire department that have stepped up and continue to work day to day and try to help everybody out. The mobile vaccine units, as some of you know, we went on the road with some of our ambulances, going to places like Clark Fork Manor, Missoula Manor, and putting shots in arms for those folks. And, obviously coordinating with, the Walgreens and the CVS folks that had contracts with some of those longer term care homes. We were able to go to those not quite in-home nursing homes, but to the senior living places and provide that service. We took on the responsibility in helping, Mike Brady with the contact tracing for all city employees, and trying to keep our workforce in the city healthy and safe as we come in and out of folks getting COVID and then the quarantine wrapped around staying up with all the CDC guidelines and trying to spread that information throughout all the departments in the city. Since April of last year, we were also in Missoula County Health Department and in those entities as we were all learning to deal with the pandemic, and pretty proud of our folks that we inject into their ICS system before we were at our county level being able to stand up the vaccination coordination team. And to wrap that around with the costs incurred, certainly working with our city administration and taking advantage of those opportunities that the CARES funding that was pushed out and trying to capture the costs that we had with that, and then also looking forward to and working with city admin with the rescue, I can't remember what it's called, the Rescue America plan, but taking those opportunities as much as possible and going from there. So as we revert back to the oversight and as Dale said, he pushed out the mayor's priority for 2021. We are into the expansion of city's investment in community health and safety. So in that document, one of our priorities as well for the fire department is develop a plan to establish a permanent funding for Missoula Fire as we continue to gather gain programs and keep up on our equipment and training, and those needs to make sure that our folks have the time, tools, and training to make sure we're providing that level of service. You know, we'll continue to look for funding of that and making sure we're doing our duty out in our public. And then, you know, in the forefront right here that we all have before us between now and the end of June is looking at that CARES unit that the Missoula Department took on to help manage that mobile support team and our crisis intervention team program. I'll tell you that we're doing everything we can in cooperation with the county and the city to capture any more funding. I think we're going to be very successful at doing that and keeping that program sustainable, but looking for all those opportunities. And the gist of that conversation, of course, come after this mid-year update, but you know, we'll be looking at if there are gaps in those grant opportunities. I think that priority is in this community and county to be able to keep that program going. Some of the fire projects, and we'll present more in that ARU as we look at the budget for 2022, but that has been a huge success, the capacity for the ARU, and the next slide will speak to that. It's been a true asset for our fire department and for the community, responding to those lower acuity calls. For that gap funding, also looking that we have that sustainability to keep up our fire engines and our fire trucks and our SCBAs when they come due. And then, you know, again, maintaining our costs associated with the level of service. To that ARU, just the quick of this 2000, capturing that 2020 and look at our station reliability. And again, station reliability is the ability for that engine to respond in that district that they're assigned to. And of course, we're looking for a passing grade of 90% of the time they were able to respond inside their own district to their own call. And in 2018, in our master fire plan, we saw that actually our numbers were a little higher than they are in 2020, but what that is directly relative to is the increased call volume that we're experiencing. So as we have more multi-engine calls and being able to cover each other's district, that number's dropping down again. But I think what this really speaks to is if you take a look at the ARU and its staff, and we were able to fairly consistently staff for 2 days, and that was on a Friday and Saturday night. This year, we were actually only budgeted for 3 months of that. We've leaned into that with the CARES money and taken an opportunity of that to staff that for approximately the last 7, is that correct? 7, 8 months? 7, 8 months. But these stats that you see are 2020, so it was most of that 5 months in the calendar year 2020. But you can see significantly in Station 2, Station 3, and Station 4, and Station 5, just an unbelievable increase in that reliability and what that unit does just in those 2 days. When when that thing is staffed, so I shouldn't say that, not in 2 days, but when that unit is staffed, you can take a look at our percentage and reliability, and it just I think it speaks for itself. It's amazing. So Station 5, that went to 100%, as most of you probably know, is Station 5 is out there in Linda Vista. And when we're having calls or multiple calls and inside the city, 5, we strip that asset out of that district often, and it responds to the center of town to try to stage for, to be able to have assets called just playing the odds of where the calls are. We'll roll to the plan for organization of physical capacity. This is the same priority that we have with police. I will tell you that I think particularly the active shooter have brought our two organizations stronger than ever, and our communication between the two is stronger than ever. And that's the way it should be, right? I mean, it's exactly what our public expects of us. But that ability for us to look at our communications and the shortage and the gap that Chief White spoke to, and us improving that was a real deficit that the police department had. And we experienced some, but we were able to have a couple different workarounds, and the police had the opportunities for that training. That combination of communication and working together really brought that to the forefront, and I'm glad we're making good headway on that. This is a shared vision that we're talking to right here specifically between the police and fire. Last year, one of our goals, not only in our master fire plan, but our 1 to 3 years, was to build a training center at one of the fire stations, Station 3. That shared vision came into with the police as they were talking about upgrading their facility. We were doing ours, and as we put our heads together, obviously, it made a lot more sense to create one building, one training facility, instead of having 2 different classrooms and having 2 different areas of work. This really makes a lot of sense. So we built a team together currently to look at that space needs and look at a combination facility, and we'll be leaning into that this year. This is just that is the picture that you see is not exactly the building that we're building, but it's a shared vision that both police and fire have. And so larger campus there. This is an inside of a training facility that you see on the other picture. We're taking that out of a model of Spokane, and they are doing great work, and as they have become really like a big brother to us, because they're doing a lot of good things just within a lot larger area. This is another part of that team, and we'll be bringing that, of course, before you when we're looking at that building. But yeah, pictures worth more than me rambling on about. To kind of tie things off, despite the COVID and what we're being able to manage with that, we were able to tie off a lot of our 1 and 2 year goals. This last year, the award no smoke, and that's a secondary filter on our fire engines, and something that is safer than our direct capture with the exhaust system, and that system is 20 some years old and has been degrading. This is the no ward smoke, is a secondary capture of exhaust directly on the fire truck, and alleviates the need to have that direct capture in your startup. But this no ward smoke also is on that apparatus 24/7. So when you're on scene and there's 3 engines operating, there's firefighters and police officers operating in around that area, it's also filtering the carcinogens coming out of that exhaust. And so it's a complete win, and we were able to step that up and complete that project this year. The paramedic training was a great win for us. As you guys know, in our master fire plan 3 years ago, it's our goal in our 5-year out to be able to provide 24/7 ALS service, and that across the whole city. And what that looks like plainly is a paramedic on every engine 24/7, or at least shooting for that 90% of the time. And this was another win with cooperation with Missoula Emergency Services and the college, and a lot of entities that came into play for. We're putting four of our own folks through that program and looking to do that again this coming year. And what that is gaining, simply just gaining from our firefighter, our force of paramedics on duty right now, gaining that to a certain level to be able to provide that level of service. We're also, not just educating folks in-house, if we call it that, we're also, recruiting, and that's another piece of the pie to be able to get us to that 24/7 coverage. With the CARES program, then we had the health and wellness coordinator. We were able to promote John Petroff up to that to oversee not just the CARES program, the CIT program, and the mobile support team program. He's also taking care of our peer fitness and our peer support groups, and we're piling duties onto him mostly almost every other week. And he's doing an outstanding job. I believe he was before most of you. John Petroff and Chief Davis were before you a couple of weeks ago before PSNH and presented their mobile support team. So I'm not going to go too much into that. But it's a great program, a good asset, and it makes a lot of sense when we're talking about the mental health component. And we look at that MST coupled with the ARU support with that, taking those lower acuity calls and keeping our fire trucks and our police officers in service more so they can serve more of the public when needed. So we were able to do covered storage at Station 4. That's that project right there. We were doing that. That's one of the great, again, speaks volumes, I think, to the men and women of our fire department. And we do that self-help, so it saves almost half right off the top, being able to do that with our own talent in the fire department. We also did a dorm remodel here at Station 1, which was really needed for the last 4 or 5 years. And as we were sequestered, if you will, in the fire stations, the firefighters were like, hey, can we pick up some hammers and nails and try to make this a better place to live? So we were able to do that. And final, as we're finishing up just this week, in fact, we offered 5 firefighters jobs, which they'll be starting in April. So early part of last year, we entered into the COVID with, we had 4 retirements off the bat. So we've been running four firefighters short for most of last year. And then the promotion of John Petroff, that put us 5 down, and still being able to do amazing things, I believe. But we were able to offer 5 jobs this week. One thing I'm pretty proud of is that we flew that the first part of February. We had 174 applications to come and work for Missoula. We interviewed 48 and we were offered 5 jobs. So I think we continue to, public facing seems to be the word of or the phrase of the year, but our public facing social media, the great things that Missoula is doing as a community, the great things that I believe we are doing in the fire department are drawing a lot of attention. And certainly we're very blessed to have that many people want to come and work for Missoula Fire. With that, I will close out and certainly would like to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Chief. Those are pretty stunning recruitment numbers. Wow. So welcome aboard to the new folks, and yeah, great to see that level of interest. I don't have any questions. Any questions from any of my colleagues? Julie.
Sorry, couldn't find my button there. Chief, I do have a couple of quick questions, and maybe Dale will answer this one for us. Do we expect that the budget shortfall that you identified is going to be made up with ARPA or other COVID related funds?
And you could just not answer, Chief, which then we'll just ask Dale. And I believe the answer to that is yes. But unless you have anything to say on that, we can pin that and flag it for Dale.
Yeah, no, it speaks volumes probably to Cheryl and her staff of the wheelbarrow full of paperwork that she's had to track and then upload to finance, and Lee has actually done a fantastic job of keeping us on track, and So yeah, I believe that most of that appears to be underneath the CARES umbrella for reimbursement, and then looking forward to the rest of the rescue, the second part of that, and that I believe it's Rescue America or something like that. I'm sorry. Yes. Sorry,
Okay.
Julie.
Yep. No, that's good. Amber, go ahead.
Oh,
I just
sorry,
wanted,
Julie, sorry, wait, hang on. I'm sorry, Julie. Did you have a follow-up?
well, it's not actually a follow-up. It's a totally different question. If I
Oh,
may.
yeah. Go ahead.
I was curious about the applicants for the job positions. I know we've talked over the last year about trying to increase diversity. I'm wondering if we got very many women and minorities applying for those positions.
Yes. Yeah, we actually really broadened our kind of our look, and we partnered with a third party called Public Safety Testing, and that reached us out into the Northwest. Particularly, we had a lot of interest from California and Oregon and Washington, and that brought a lot of new applicants. And yeah, I would say there's certainly a large cross section of folks that were applying for the permit.
Thanks. I'm really glad to hear that you made that effort to broaden the recruitment. Thanks.
Yeah, good question. Go ahead, Amber. Sorry about that.
yeah, that's okay. I can just say from being on the health board that the sorting out of all the COVID expenses and reimbursement is in process right now. I just wanted to say thanks for the presentation. That was an excellent presentation, and all the work that you guys have done this year. It's been an extraordinary year for everyone, and just really appreciate your help with the vaccination side and getting the mobile crisis unit up and running. And it's just been a big year. So thank you.
Thank you.
And Heather.
Just a comment, Chief. I'm really encouraged by the number of applicants that came forward for the positions that we have within our department. I think it really speaks to the nature of folks that really want to do something for their community, despite how hard and difficult the position is. I know it. Every one of you work really hard while you're on site, but also trying to keep your bodies and minds uplifted and in good shape. And I know that has been a real struggle this last year. So I'm very encouraged to see that there is a large number of people that want to be public servants. And in large part, I think that also is a nod to your and the other assistant chiefs' leadership in terms of making it a place that people want to be. So keep up the good work, and let's see that just trickle throughout the entire organization. I think we'll be rock solid if we do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, perfect sentiment to end on. My thanks as well. Well said, Heather. Thank you, Chief, and everybody in the department. I'm not seeing any additional questions, and so let you guys go and turn it over to you, Dale.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you. So I am going to start. Lee's going to share the screen. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to close the loop on a couple of other big strategic plan objectives that we had related to this that you didn't necessarily hear from the other presentations, or that they're directly related to. And then Lee's going to talk about the general fund. And yes, we'll be able to answer the questions related to that, the overtime costs in fire. And it's a really good story. Without the support of the federal government under the CARES Act and ARPA, this would have been very difficult. But we are going to be really well set to set the stage of the future and come out of this pandemic very strong, and being able to set the stage for a really good recovery. So I'm going to touch you on a couple of the strategic goals that are kind of organization wide and are in that organizational excellence section of our strategic plan. And it covers all, so it covers all aspects of the city. And what I'm really pleased with, and you heard it today, from both Jason and Jeff, and then last week, is that I think we've really got a great management team here. We are really innovative. We're doing lots of new things, and tracking results with data And we're getting, we're new to that management model, but we're making baby steps. So we actually, but we formalized it in the strategic plan, in what we call results-driven management model. And so you saw some of the outcome and service level indicators through this. We are going to continue to put those together and create a formal way that those are reported, by department in areas rather than a mid-year review. We want to be able to create those places where the public can go to understand what those are, and build the website or whatever tool we end up using to do that on these things, and get to the questions like Julie asked about how are we measuring the efficacy of our training, and so all of those things will be, we build those measures and get them out there. For not only for you, but the public to be able to understand how we're doing that. And how we are doing that is we have, we've been making strides. So we are doing it in absence of a centralized platform that would do all of that for us. But we are working towards the technology platform implementation. And so we are moving. And a lot of it is Microsoft driven. It is. We are moving the entire city to Microsoft 365. Read that first tranche of just getting all of the regular tools in that system up and running. Word, Excel, Teams, and those things. But our intention is to implement all of these tools you see on this list: collaboration tools, automated workflow, and with that comes process improvements. Business analytics and management dashboards. That's where we would use those tools to measure, to show the outcome results, service level indicators, and create these project visibility dashboards, so you can have at a glance, look at a specific project and see where that is at related to key indicators related to that project, timeframes, milestones, and that sort of thing. You can go to the next slide, Lee. Thank you. You heard a lot about space throughout all of these things. As we are moving from a town to a small city, all of these issues are going to are coming to fruition at the same time. Thankfully, we have this great opportunity in the federal building acquisition. We're partnering with Missoula County and have a design team looking performing due diligence for us related to that. We are nearing the completion of that due diligence, and they're looking at a condition assessment of the facility. I'm pleased to report now, just preliminary, everything looks good. The owner, the General Service Administration, has done a great job of keeping that, maintaining that building well. And then a big piece of that is feasibility for city and county occupancy. Can we move all of the departments that we feel needs to fit into that building, along with our partners at the county, into that plan? It seems to be working very well, and we'll have a formal presentation to council on that in the coming weeks. But that is going pretty well. And we're also building the estimated cost to get these departments in there. While it's an office building today, and so it looks like we're not going to have to invest a bunch in of infrastructure and redoing a lot of things. But there are going to be there's certainly going to be costs related to making it fit our needs, and some of the different kinds of services we provide, like municipal court is an example where it's not really a traditional office space, and we need to be able to accommodate those types of services in that building. And if you recall, there's we're able to potentially get this conveyance through its designation as a historic monument, and so the historic covenants that we get to propose these historic covenants to the National Park Service for their acceptance, and we have our design team are really great historic preservationists, and we're excited to be part of that, and that all goes to that application to the National Park Service. Council will ask council to allow us to apply for this later this summer. And so in accordance, and we're also looking at, the space needs of the federal building deals with our largely administrative departments. You heard Jeremy talk about the Public Works Facilities Master Plan, and we're able to, being able to accommodate all these needs, planning needs at the same time. Chief White and Jeff just talked about Public Safety Facility Needs Assessment. And then the other piece of that is the Parks and Rec maintenance operations. So we have all our plans are coming together at the same time. So it really help us make decisions and as we build our capital improvement program moving forward.
Dale, you got muted somehow.
Yeah, you got muted.
Sorry about that.
Thanks, Julie. I was muted
But,
too.
I think I tried to advance a slide on a show that I wasn't actually running and then muted myself. So one of our organizational excellence strategic goals was it was addressing workplace safety. We went through a risk assessment in partnership with the Department of Homeland Security. They helped us identify some risk factors and things we need to address. We've issued an RFP for emergency evacuation and continuity of business planning. The responses, it's closed now, and we're reviewing those responses to help us build, what we should do and best practices for not only the kind of the security access to the building, but notification in event and continuity of business and how we keep operations going. Should, for example, the city hall not be available, how do we keep employees being paid? Those types of plans, and then also the pandemic has created lots of opportunities for us in public meeting formats. We are meeting here virtually today, and while I think we all see the light at the end of the tunnel and getting things back to normal. But the new normal, I think, is, we've created, technology has created us the ability to meet in various ways. And we want to prepare, we want to be prepared for, be able to host these types of public meetings in a broad range of flexibility, to be able to meet in person, virtually, in hybrid modes, and in hybrid modes, meaning that, is the public can meet virtually or in person, and even members of a body, any of our boards and commissions and the council may be able to participate in person and virtually, and just help access to everyone. And then finally, I think we are taking a very serious look at our security needs based on recent legislative activities and gun safety issues that we see and are going to take very seriously. And we are not only looking at that from the perspective of public meeting formats, but access to all public facilities, including some of our ones that you may not think about, but in aquatics and those types of facilities. So those are in consideration now and being developed. So that's the end of that piece of it related to strategic planning and those organizational excellence things. And we would talk about general fund and what's happening next, unless there's questions you want to.
Yeah, let's pause there. And if anybody on council has any question there, I want to use the opportunity to just quickly say, I've been in discussion with many of my colleagues and with Dale, Stacey Anderson as chair of public safety and health. I've asked to sort of run point, if you will, on some of this work that we are looking at regarding our public meetings going forward and safety, as Dale mentioned, specifically in light of some of the legislative action. I want to make sure all of us here, I want people to know that. And I also want you to feel free, reaching out to me, Gwen and Stacy with thoughts and concerns around that. And I just want folks to understand how seriously and I'm glad to see the administration take this issue. As Dale indicated in that slide, I think there's consensus that we absolutely want to offer an opportunity for virtual participation for folks. But we also have some challenges around making sure that everyone is safe. And I want to be really clear that everyone feels safe participating in their local government and the democratic institutions that we participate in. And by God, we're going to make sure that that happens. So I'm not seeing questions, and I haven't managed time the greatest, but let's move on to Lee.
Thank you, Brian. I wanted to go over our FY21 fiscal year projections for the general fund. As you've heard from some previous presentations, some folks had higher than anticipated expenditures, especially related to COVID. But surprisingly, in between departments having being very focused on belt tightening and being very cautious with their expenditures, as well as the receipt of around $880,000 more in CARES funding for the general fund, we are targeting ending up in much better position than what we had originally budgeted for. So as you can see, if we go down our difference column here, or I'll start at the beginning, our FY21 adopted and amended budget. So any amendments that City Council has passed within this fiscal year are included in these totals. Our year-end projections. These projections have been created in conversation with various departments, understanding future grant revenues that come in, maybe some fee revenues that are coming in more less than anticipated and so forth, as well as the calculations that we do year after year, incorporating historic information are what leads us to these year-end projections. So our revenues are projected to come in around $770,000 higher than anticipated. And net expenditures, $2.1 million under budget. So between the two of those, we are looking at an ending fund balance of approximately $4.6 million. That is over our 7% target. This is the first time we will be reaching that number in quite a few years. And it does go back to that combination of CARES funding and departments belt tightening. And a couple of details on that, which I thought council might find interesting. Our property tax receipts are coming in under budget, but by a very, very small percentage. So they are really coming in very close to what was levied and what was budgeted. About $140,000 less out of $25 million. I think that's a good indicator of what's happening in the community so far. Fines and forfeitures, municipal court was rather prescient, and they budgeted 30% lower than revenues from FY20. They were really anticipating, they knew that their workload had really slowed down what they could actually process, but then it turned out that the revenues were coming in higher than expected. And then as discussed previously, the expenditure savings are really coming in from salary savings, and the major departments are where we're really seeing a lot of those savings. This, of course, leads us into the FY22 budget process and next steps. It's the natural question that everybody has after going through mid-year at this point. So our calendar currently is April through June. The city departments will be working internally on drafting the FY22 baseline budget, new requests, and CIP projects. And then after reviewed by the mayor, he will present his budget to City Council, Budget Committee of the Whole, sometime in early July. Then July through August, there will be presentations to the Budget Committee of the Whole and City Council deliberations and approval of the budget towards the end of August. One more item I wanted to speak to, maybe not in the best order here, but is the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, otherwise known as ARPA, because government is good at those types of acronyms. So there are $350 billion that are being issued to the states. Missoula's direct allocation, which comes in due to being entitlement city, is going to be $14.3 million. We will receive half of that within this fiscal year of 2021 and half of that in the next fiscal year. It must be spent by December 31st, 2024. It can't be used for pensions or tax cuts. And we're responsible to the federal treasury, but we don't have a lot of specifics about what the eligible use of those funds are. We will know more sometime in early May. They anticipate releasing those regulations 60 days after adoption. There's an additional $10 billion that are going to the state for capital project fund. And so the state needs to spend this on critical capital projects, infrastructure, broadband, other items in response to the public health emergency, and we are waiting to hear information from the state on exactly what they will be spending that on. I do believe that water, wastewater, and stormwater are likely very eligible for some of that funding through the state. And that closes out our FY21 mid-year budget review. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's like you've, after these years, Lee, you've been able to read my mind. Thanks for the excellent information. I'd almost like to put the fund balance slide on the screen so it can etch itself into my computer screen. It's fantastic news. Heidi.
So I just have a question around, which you might not have the answer for, but the 10 billion you just mentioned that's going to the state. Do you know if like public spaces like parks are going to be eligible? I could make an argument about why they're important for health, especially in times like COVID, where outside spaces are the safest places to congregate. So I'm just curious if you have any idea of how the state's going to lean on that.
We have not received specifics from them yet. I doubt we will receive specifics until the legislature has concluded.
Thanks. I do want to also, go ahead, Dale.
I was going to add, not only is there the particular infrastructure budget, there are, the state is getting allocations of ARPA dollars for education, what they call broadband and digital inclusion, childcare. I mean, there's a bunch of buckets, and I think so. Not only do we have the opportunity to use the 14.3 million of the direct allocation from the U.S. Treasury that the city is getting, but we may be eligible to apply for all those other funding as well in all these buckets. And then the mayor is intending to convene a group of all the agencies that are going to get this money, so we can do a coordinated effort on recovering from this pandemic the best way possible.
Thanks. And Julie, I see your hand up. Let me go quickly. We've got one attendee, Ms. Van Fossen, and you should be able to talk, Ms. Van Fossen.
I'm like a broken record, but I would just appreciate it if the slides would be made available attached to the meeting. They were very informative today.
Yes, thank you. They absolutely will be. And thanks for attending. Julie.
Lee, I know that there still is a lot of questions around when we get the money and what the constraints are going to be about how to spend it. But you said that we'll know those criteria by May 1st, and then we'll get half of the money in this fiscal year. Does any of that money have to be spent in this fiscal year? Because that doesn't leave us a lot of time.
It does not. And the May date is an estimated date from the Treasury, just to let folks know. We didn't receive full guidance from the Treasury on the CARES Act this last go around until January. This current administration has stated that they anticipate releasing guidance sooner. So we are hopeful for that May date. There is no requirement to spend it within this fiscal year. I believe the intention is simply to get the funding into the hands of the municipalities that need to spend it. The requirement is to be spent by the end of 2024.
Thanks. Dale, could you tick off any bullet points that you might want to add? With us having our fund balance at that level, you have spoken in the past of sort of what that enables for the city. Is there anything you would highlight there?
Well, our definition of a balanced budget is always that, our ongoing revenues match our ongoing expenses, and we are at our fund balance targets. When we exceed them here, then how we treat one-time versus ongoing items in our budget is different. When our fund balance is below our targets, we just don't have the excess cash to be able to use on one-time projects, and we end up having to use direct taxpayer dollars. I mean, so essentially in those times, one-time one-time expenses like capital will directly compete with ongoing resources. Now this essentially gives us two different buckets, and we can, as long as we are committed to aligning our ongoing revenues and expenses, we can use those other dollars to fund one-time items that come up and do capital and it's so similar, managed similar to the way that you see the utilities do, because it's driven by their debt covenants, and the extra revenues that they collect because of our debt covenants are used for cash or capital.
Great, thank you. Perfect ending. We're at time for the meeting. Thank you very much for the presentations and questions. We will be adjourned.
Thank you.